Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Ask the Dungeon Master. I'm doing this as a 100 subscriber special kind of thing. I just recently hit 100 subscribers over the weekend, and it filled me with a bit of joy. I was like, yes, I'm getting somewhere with this. I'm entertaining people with my content, and it makes me happy. So here we go with this new question and answer. I mostly got my questions from Reddit. I guess because I don't have enough followers on Twitter. So if you are on Twitter, follow me on Twitter at imcmin08. Uh, yeah. So, first question. First question is from Earthquakist. Which moral alignment would you say you are, and how about your favorite? I'd say I'm true neutral. I don't care either way about things outside of my sphere of influence as a grand scheme, and on the cosmic scale, everything's just gray. There's no really white and black when it comes to good and evil. It's just gray. There's shades of gray. Like some things are like obviously okay, that's evil, and other things it's like okay, that's obviously good. But there's that weird gray area in between that just kind of spans everything. It's like oh, you stole, but you stole to feed your starving family, kind of thing. So yeah, as far as my favorite, I would say Lawful Good because why wouldn't you want to be the hero? The hero's liked, the hero's loved, the hero is paraded, and the hero can often get things done if with the right support group. But just play it right, and people will love you for it. What's your favorite type of cheese? By George Broughton. Smoked Gouda, same as the last time you asked me. Uh, Isabel Rich, I'm going to college in a new area soon. How can I find other people who like Dungeons and Dragons without seeming too nerdy? Well, first off, don't be afraid of being nerdy. That's pretty much it. I mean, don't be afraid to be nerdy. Uh, if you don't mind playing over the web, there's plenty of forums on Reddit and Facebook for whatever edition you're looking for, as well as finding a group for that edition. It's pretty easy these days. You just got to find your schedule to match up just right because everyone's an adult. That's pretty much the way it goes. In fact, all except for one player in my Surskin campaign are in entirely different states. And that's just life. Regnus and Alvar are somewhere in Connecticut. Uh, Kiata and Tulip are somewhere in the central time zone. I forget what state, to be honest. But for the most part, if you are too nervous about meeting people in person to do it, then over the web is just as good, if a little bit less than in person. In person has its benefits. Now, as far as being shy about this, don't be. Because one of my Pathfinder groups had a former football star when he was back in high school. Yeah, he was one of those jockey types. Actually, all of them really liked football. One of them was a former Marine, and that's not the only group that I've had like that. When I played second edition, nope, it was the first edition group. They're all kind of smudging together in my head. The first edition group that I played with was all old Marines. Like these guys were old, but they were awesome. They were all old Marines playing first edition Dungeons and Dragons. I was the odd man out because I was the only one who has not been in military. So don't be, nervous about approaching people to play Dungeons and Dragons because honestly, what's wrong with being a nerd? What's wrong with being a geek? Geeks and nerds are cool. But at the same time, if you see anyone playing Magic the Gathering or any tabletop game or any RPG whatsoever or any, trading card game, chances are you can convince them to play Dungeons and Dragons with you if you just give it enough effort. That's pretty much all you gotta do. Not a turnip. Obviously being a troll, do you know what sex is? Yes, I have a son. He's appeared in a couple of videos that I've done. Derpy Seals VI? Yes. How does one simply Dungeons and Dragons? Group of friends, core rulebook, imagination, snacks, lots of snacks, more snacks, drinks. You essentially just need one person to be the narrator / storyteller, who's the dungeon master. You can have a co-dungeon master who can help him with the rules and so on. But essentially, you want the narrator to tell the world as the world is, and describe it to you, and essentially lay out everything for you. And you, as the players, then interact with this world together as a team. If you're new into Dungeons and Dragons, I would suggest 5th edition because honestly, it's the easier of the editions to learn. as far as the most fun, that's up for debate. But 5th edition is pretty fun, and it's the easiest for anyone to learn. In Tiffy, how do you play Dungeons & Dragons? Copy paste Kung Fu moves. Same answer as last one. Element Panda, what is your channel name? Ian, part-time Dungeon Master. I'm here till the end of the world. Darius the Gamer, how do you interpret chaotic and lawful? I consider lawful as following a personal code, the law, or the rules of your beliefs, paladin/cleric. Chaotic is just not following any rules. I would like your thoughts, please. This was kind of fun. So, how do I interpret chaotic and lawful? You're right. Excuse me. You're right in the way that lawful would be. You have a personal code, law of the land, law of your beliefs. Especially if you're a paladin or a cleric. Last one's the biggest. You would adhere to these rules as ironclad as possible. You might bend one way or another, but you will never fully break any of these rules or laws because they define who you are. You don't want to break them because they give you a sense of protection or authority depending on your moral side. You see, the alignment grid is essentially not only lawful, neutral, and chaotic, which is essentially your stance on the chaos versus order scale, but also of your good versus evil scale of, good, neutral, and evil. If you're lawful good, then you believe that the laws are essentially there for the greater good, and maybe one or two corrupt ones need to be broken or replaced, but you would try and do it in a peaceful way. Lawful neutral would be more of you obey the law regardless of whether you like it or not. If you don't like the way the law is, or you feel that the law is corrupt, then you lawfully find a way of changing it. Lawful evil would manipulate the hell out of those laws in order to get ahead. That's just how lawful is. Lawful is that way. Chaotic is you go off whims. I actually don't like the chaotic alignments because they are just so whimsical. You go based off of what's inside here versus what anyone else tells you. If you feel like what you're doing is wrong and you don't like it, then you don't have to do it because there's no one telling you you must do it. And if they do tell you what you must do, then you're probably going to hit them depending on what your alignment is, or what the other side of your alignment is. If you're chaotic neutral, screw you. You can't tell me what to do. I'm going to sit here and turn into a cactus. And you're just going to sit there thinking that you're going to be a cactus because you're crazy. If you're chaotic evil, then you'll probably set them on fire for them telling you to do something you didn't want to do. If you're chaotic good, well, if you figure out they're evil, well, then smite them because they're evil. Chaotic is unreliable, in my opinion, and I hate that. But that's just how it is. C. This is from Soojin. What can I, as a player at the table, do to make my DM's job easier? First, know what your role is. Know what action you're going to take before it is your turn. Essentially, planning ahead for your next turn helps speed up combat and makes it easier and less of a stress on your dungeon master, as well as the other players, if you're sitting there flipping through your spell book, trying to decide which spell you want to cast. Another thing is you could, manage initiative for your dungeon master. I know some people who do that. It does help at times. If I'm already kind of about everything, sometimes other players may help out and do the initiative tracking for me, so that way I don't have to think about it while I'm also thinking about 30 other things. Another thing you can do is once you figure out the monster's AC number, like if its AC is 16, go ahead and write that down, so that way you can go ahead and say, on your next attack, I rolled a 17, that hits, correct? And you can just say yes or no. It's that simple. Altruism 555 asks, I've been trying to get this answered for a while, so I can hope you can help. How does Spare the Dying and Vampiric Touch interact? Context. I was playing my 5e character, was very angry, so he made a deal with our monk. Let me drain you for health, and I'll heal you up to past where you were to begin with. He agreed, so I used Vampiric Touch twice, bringing him to 0, then cast Spare the Dying so I could continue to do it. Touch, spare, repeat. My dungeon master said it was within the rules, but was too brutal and he wouldn't allow it. I'm not sure, though, thinking on it, does this actually work? Yes. It is an abuse of the rules. But yes, it works. So what happens essentially is, when it comes down to it, spare the dying removes all death saving throws. Because when you spare the dying, you stabilize them. When a creature is stabilized, death saving throws and successful saving throws, both failed and successes, reset back to 0. Their health goes back to 0, all of it. So that's pretty much how it is. They do not resume dying unless they take a hit, and if they do not take damage within 1d4 hours, they begin regaining health points. That's how the rules go. So yes, you can use Vampiric Touch on a dying creature, and then you spare the dying. Do note that using Vampiric Touch on a creature counts as a failed death save, though. So be careful of how much you do. Also, if you go over their max HP, it will kill them outright. That's how the rules work. But if you keep both those in mind, and you constantly just rotate between the two, you should be fine. So long as, when it gets to the monk's turn, he doesn't roll a nat 1 on his death saving throw, because that counts as 2 fails, and then he's dead because, whoopsie. It would be much easier to just heal him for 1 point of damage, and then Vampiric Touch again and again. This, however, is extremely evil, just so you know, because you are technically torturing your fellow party member or whoever you decide to do this to. So, yeah. Keep that in mind. Jevex of Light. Can you choke someone while grappling to deal damage or knock them out? Yes, but it is extremely inefficient. It is one of the most inefficient ways of rendering an opponent unconscious. You would find much better time just beating the crap out of them normally. Essentially, when it comes down to it, you can replace, in 5th edition, you can replace one of your attacks with a grapple check by essentially doing an opposing strength or athletics check. You grapple them. You can use an extra attack, or you wait till your next turn and hope that you keep them in your grip, and use your attack then to proceed to choke them. By doing this, you're using the strangulation rules, which is on page 183 of your player's handbook, near the bottom. It specifies, and I got my notes up here to make sure I got this right, specifies that I can't speak right now. Specifies, though, that a creature can hold its breath for a number of minutes equal to 1 plus its Constitution modifier, with a minimum of 30 seconds if it has a negative Constitution modifier. When they run out of breath, they begin to choke and can survive for a minimum of 1 round or a number of rounds equal to their Constitution modifier, depending on which one is higher. At the start of the following turn, they drop to 0 HP and are dying, and it cannot regain health points or be stabilized until it can breathe again. In short, a creature with a Constitution modifier of +2 can hold its breath for essentially 3 minutes. That's 30 rounds. And then after the 3 minutes, or the 30 rounds, it has 2 rounds to breathe, or it goes to 0 HP. So you would have to essentially grapple and strangle them and maintain that for 32 rounds before you rendered them unconscious. Please keep this in mind, because that is highly, highly ineffective. A good other spot is if they had a negative Constitution modifier, they still have a minimum of 30 seconds. That's still 5 rounds that you would have to hold them there, strangling them, before they would start falling unconscious, falling to 0 because of lack of air. Paige Skanku, how many times do you think a wild magic sorcerer should use Surge? If I am the player, whenever I can, because it's hilarious. Because either something great's going to happen, or something horrible is going to happen. But something great might happen. As a dungeon master, oh please God, don't. And if you do, don't screw up on your throw, or on your check. Because if you do, you're going to fill the freaking room with, potatoes or something. I mean, come on. Tony G623 asks, started a new character, a mystic, and I'm semi-new to D&D. When speaking with someone telepathically, cannot speak, can they respond to what I'm saying, or can they just hear me? Was looking at the book, but I couldn't find it. Thanks. Short answer, yes. Essentially, it's a 2-way communication if you want it, or a 1-way communication if you want it. You are the chooser, as you are the source of the telepathy. Also note, so long as the person you're speaking to speaks one language, even if it's not a language you speak, as long as it speaks one language or can understand one language, telepathy will work. C. Pirko asks, I'm new to Dungeons & Dragons and have never played, but am interested in learning. Have you ever had the experience, and is it possible to have two dungeon masters to help manage stats and storylines and whatnot? Yes, this is called a co-dungeon master. A good example would be the Suriskin campaign. I would say that Regnus Willow, or Kelker, as his real name is my co-dungeon master. He is the living player's handbook, as I call him at times. He knows pretty much almost every rule that there is in the game, so whenever I kind of fizz a bit on a rule, he helps pick up for me. Because I'm human, and I've got a lot of different editions in my head, so sometimes rules don't overlap well. So a co-dungeon master is extremely helpful for those of you who either struggle with the rules or feel like they're already overswamped with the story and they need someone to help manage a couple of other things. So a co-dungeon master is completely possible as well as extremely helpful if you do use it. Red S5 asked, I've noticed that people often focus on every aspect important of being a good dungeon master except for being generally entertaining. Why do you think this is, and how important do you think it is for the dungeon master to be somewhat of an entertainer for their group? This is something I struggle with because I don't find myself very entertaining, but that's because I'm awkward, and I'm socially awkward and weird. But I guess we don't really consider it because we expect everyone to be entertaining. We expect you to be able to tell a good story because everyone knows good stories. I mean, that's just kind of how we think. We expect everyone to be able to tell something with a great amount of showmanship or panache to it that we forget that there are some people who can't. You have to be entertaining, otherwise it's just boring. It's kind of one of those things that it's one of those things you either be born with or you need to work on. I myself am thinking about taking improv classes to get better because I feel like I need to become more entertaining for you guys, but also for my players. That's why I think it is that way, is that we essentially forget that not everyone can tell a great story. And how important it is extremely important for your dungeon master to be entertaining. I find ways to try and be somewhat entertaining to my players. I'm trying to be better, at least in my opinion. They tell me I'm doing good, but I'm weird and awkward, and I don't think I'm doing good enough. So I'm working on that part. But it is extremely important for your dungeon master to be entertaining, as well as important for your players to be entertaining. It's a two-way street, but as far as the dungeon master goes, a couple of improv classes won't hurt. I'm showing that's all the questions I have. Well, thank you for joining me for this version of Ask the Dungeon Master, the 100 subscriber special. I got a lot of good questions. I really enjoyed reading every single one of these. I think I got a total of... who cares? Anyways, thank you for joining me for this episode, and I'll catch you guys next time. And, as always, like and subscribe if you aren't already subscribed, and let's get a little further together and get better at being dungeon masters together, as well as players. Anyways, laters.